Well, hello everybody. So I just wanted to make this video because um I wanted to make one more video. Now I've already made a video on the election. I think a couple of them off of what happened wrong with the keys, and I predicted the 312 to um I think three was it 312 to 226? Yeah, that adds up to 538. The 312 to 226, I predicted that. I predicted that light blue New Hampshire, well, sort of. So I wanted to say a quick thing about my map, which is some of the states like New Jersey I put as solid blue were actually more towards lean blue. And what I have to say towards that is that it was within the confidence interval. So I would say that there is a kind of a confidence interval for each rating. So you know how I say leans are 2 to 4, likelies are 5 to 6, and 5 to 7, and anything 8 over is safe dem. I would also like to say that there are no hard cutoffs, and that uh, one can kind of stretch into another category. So I wouldn't say I was far off. You know what I mean? I think that's a healthy way of forecasting. So, for example, if you're forecasting it to be safe dem, then it could be, say, 6 to 10 points. So that would be from the likely range to the safe range, but most of the values are within the safe range, if that makes sense. I don't think it's healthy to forecast just off a single point. So I want to say that my election night map was right, but really I wanted to talk about the actual results of the election and what I was thinking during the actual results coming in, and what I've seen people, even experts and even Alan Littman, get wrong. So the most obvious of these mistakes was early in the night. They were predicting that she was going to win Pennsylvania and that she was going to win Georgia because she was overperforming in the urban counties. She did actually overperform in Georgia, and I was actually quite uh, shocked, flabbergasted when Donald Trump took Georgia, because I didn't think that it would go red, because Fulton County, DeKalb, Cobb County, those surrounding suburbs were, and the city of Atlanta, shit, were all, um, they were all highly, they were more Democrat than they were in 2020. Well, what I have to say towards that is that he did better in kind of the mid area of the state, and that's why he won. But we're not going to be focusing on that. We're going to be focusing on Pennsylvania in particular, the Midwest, and even maybe the North Carolina. Georgia is an outlier in this election, right? So I want to focus on the main problem. And these expert news stations, right? New York Times got it right. With their needles, they were right. I was watching the election with my boyfriend on a Discord live stream, and I was the only one that said this, which was, listen, all right, these the Kamala is performing. This was early in the night. Kamala is performing the same as Biden did in 2020, and that's a problem because the early vote favors Democrats. And as the vote comes in, it's going to shift more towards Republicans. And that's exactly what happened. And that's why even early into the night, early hours of Battlegrounds closing, although the ratings were tossed up on New York Times, you could kind of see the needle moving a little bit more towards the right instead of the left. And these people were like, well, why is the needle moving to the right and not the left? And the reason is because the New York Times, the statisticians in the New York Times, realize that there is a confidence interval of how much how of in-voter people and how many votes are going to be Republican versus Democrat, and they lean more Republican. And given that number of expected majority Republican in-person votes against what we're seeing with the early Democrat votes and how they're turning out, they could move the needle slightly to the right, because it was predicted that in more circumstances the Republicans would outperform in numbers than the Democrats and would ultimately end up winning the state. I guarantee you that's the reason why, right? So I was talking to my boyfriend. He's like, yeah, but she's performing just a little bit under Biden, or she's performing or the same as Biden, or it's early. And I kept telling him, listen, all right, if Republicans don't overperform in the early vote, that's not a problem. Or if Republicans underperform in the early vote to a point, it's not surprising. Like if Democrats are ahead compared to 2020 in the early vote, it's not surprising. But if Republicans are ahead in 2020 in the early vote, it is surprising. And we did see a few of those instances. And that's when I knew Trump was not likely, but had a good shot of winning this thing. Right? So I've watched a lot of election night analysis, and I don't think not one person on these live streams has said, listen, Democrat early vote is a real thing, Republican late vote is a real thing. Right? They just don't understand that. They think that Kamala Harris is just going to maintain her lead in those counties throughout the entire night, and that is not how it works. How many times have we seen states go from 50-50 early on to lean Republican, sometimes even 6, 7, or 8 points, depending on kind of those battleground lean Republican states that they thought they had a shot in, and they go sometimes 6, 7, 8 points Republican, because Democrats perform in the early vote, and once the Republicans go in person, they'll kick their asses. Right? How many times have we seen this? How many times do we gotta teach you this lesson, old man, kind of shit? Right? I mean, seriously. And you don't have these expert forecasters saying this? Like, really? You guys are expert forecasters and you can't understand this simple concept? Are you so, blindsided? So, anyways. Well, and here's the other thing. I was watching some election night live streams like Alan Littman. And what I noticed in Pennsylvania in particular, but I'm sure this is in other counties, other states, is that he would go around and he would say, look, all of the Trump counties are in. So there's no way that Trump is going to take this when there's 50% in Philadelphia. And that's how it traditionally goes, right? We'll see even in Georgia, maybe even Wisconsin, what we'll see is the urban areas will take the longest. What'll happen usually is one or two things in battlegrounds. So what'll happen in key races, at least in the modern age, is number one, and I've seen this over and over. Number one, what'll happen is the Democrat county will come in, the Republican counties will come in, they'll kind of flip, and then the Republican counties will be all ahead, the Republican will be ahead, and then the last Democrat votes come in from the urban areas, and the Democrat wins, right? That's scenario number one. Scenario number two is the Republicans are behind in the election as the urban vote gets counted. Their counties fill in, they become red, and then Republicans kind of either remain steady or slightly gain on their lead throughout the night, and the urban areas can't catch up, and the Republican wins. Those are the scenarios of what's been happening in the past couple election cycles, and people just don't understand this, right? So let's take an example, right? So Alan Littman was thinking, hey, all these red counties are in, but what he wasn't factoring is the early vote in the blue counties, the blue at the time counties, especially light blue counties that were suburbs and heavily, kind of populated areas. those turned red. So Bucks County, and I forgot the other one, but it's Erie, Pennsylvania, those turned red as the votes went on in the night. And that is what people don't understand. That's the first problem, right? So all these Republican counties might be 95% counting or counted in. First of all, there's always one or two Republican counties that aren't in, right? They're just not in. And that's a few thousand votes, and that's important, right? That's still a few thousand votes for a Republican, right? So you have to be aware of that, is that those counties, those one or two rural red counties that aren't in, those are solid Republican 99% of the time. And those few thousand votes do count in a state like Wisconsin or Michigan. So that's number one, is that he didn't realize, him and his son didn't realize that just because light blue and moderate blue counties are what they are in the early stages doesn't mean that they're not going to flip red in the later stages. And that's what happened in Erie and Bucks County, Pennsylvania. A second thing is that we like to visualize counties as either blue or red, and we don't really keep track of them as the night progresses. Now, what do I mean by this? So, say that you have a heavily Democrat county in the beginning of the night that is like, on the map, it's deep blue. And then throughout the night, it goes to a lighter blue. Well, in your mind, you don't really account for that change, and it's still blue in your mind, right? So it's like, she's winning this county. She's winning this county. But I think the biggest thing is that what they kind of get this right? Because they look at the 2020 results and they compare it to 2024 constantly. That's what I did with my boyfriend on election night. What they don't realize, though, is that in a sense, elections are like quizzes and grades. Now, what do I mean by this, right? So if Philadelphia goes from 80% Democrat to 19% Republican, let's say, because there's third party, right? If it goes down to 78% Democrat and, what would it be? 78% Democrat and 21% Republican, then I believe that means that the Republican will narrow the gap, and if not, his lead will expand. Is I think because what that means is that more Republican votes have come in than Democrat votes at the time, or the proportion of the votes has come in more Republican than Democrat, and so his lean expands. So they see these deep blue counties, and they always remain deep blue, and they're thinking, hey, this is pretty great, but and it may be that the Democrat counties, the deep blue Democrat counties, they only slightly underperform by a couple points, but that's thousands of votes that they're losing by underperforming by 1 or 2 points. And people tend to focus on, okay, people tend to focus on that kind of stuff. Oh man, I remember this area. Am I gonna get in trouble for this? No, okay, I'm not. Not unless I go over here. Oh, wonderful. I love this game. What village is this? I don't even know what village this is. Gunugrada. So anyways, I wanted to say that though, is that just because Philadelphia is, say, blue as the sea is not actually blue, it's blue appearing. As blue as dark blue jeans, I guess you could say, as dark as a navy blue color, it doesn't tell you much, because if Democrats have always been performing extremely well down there, right? And say there's like 50% in or whatever, right? If Democrats have always performed well down there, and it shifts a little bit more to the right and it still appears deep blue on the map, you're saying, hey, she's got 50% more to go in this deep blue map or this deep blue county. And the thing is that she's actually underperforming in that county. So those are just some common mistakes. I'm kind of slipping up my words. I had a 15-hour travel today. So that's all I wanted to say. Goodbye.